All right. Good afternoon, folks. Gonna give everyone just a couple of seconds to get situated, and I'll check the waiting room here. Thanks for joining, y'all. So today is kind of a special water cooler chat, not our typical. Today we have the Director of Virginia Soil Health Coalition, Mary Sketch Bryant, who has kindly joined us today to share about the coalition as well as their For the Soils initiative. So that is awesome. Thank you for being here, Mary. And we really want to take some time to hear from y'all. So, do y'all see an opportunity for partnership? Where do you see a need for more soil health outreach, marketing, etc.? So, with that, I'll pass it over to Mary.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be with you all. I'm calling in from Salem, Virginia, so I don't know if we have any other Southwest, although Salem's not really Southwest Virginia. So if we have any far Southwest Virginia folks here, they always get mad when we say that Roanoke and Salem is Southwest because it's not. But further Southwest than some parts, I guess, of the state. Anyway, great to be with you all. I'm going to share my screen here. And just going to share a little bit about the coalition and the For the Soil initiative, but want to spend most of the time hearing from you all, chatting with you all. It's a lot of names that are new to me on this call, which is exciting. And what I love about getting to do this job is meet new folks and hear all of your experiences and expertise. Let me see here. Cool. All right. So, as Rachel said, Director of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, which is a network of partners around the state, really working to advance soil health throughout the state. And I kind of like to clarify that we didn't necessarily start to do more work on the ground because Virginia is such a cool state where there is so much happening. Um, and how can we just leverage some of what that is happening and support that capacity and bring it, coordinate it more and collaborate more across the partners that are doing this work. And so our vision is to strengthen and support a broad collaborative network that improves and expands soil health across all of Virginia's landscapes. And I'll say we're embedded in Virginia Tech and Cooperative Extension, so that's who I work for. But like I said, we've got 40, I think it's on the next slide here, 48 now. I always am losing count because there's new ones popping on, partners in our network. We really take this crowded table approach because we know that soil health really hits so many corners of the conservation work we're doing, agricultural productivity work, urban and suburban landscaping work. And so how can we pull all of these partners in a way where it intersects with their mission and use that to advance this common mission and vision? So not a tight membership, not nothing strict. So it's just really a way to leverage that network. And the Association of Saltwater Conservation Districts has been part of the coalition since the beginning, since 2013 when it started and was really just informal there as an informal group of 12 partners. And I came on board in 2021 with some funding to build it out. And since then, the coalition has, or the association has been part of our steering committee. So really key in our leadership in the guiding of the coalition moving forward. So I've been grateful for that partnership with the association, but also with individual districts. You can see a few of them here: Piedmont, Colonial, Thomas Jefferson. I think Henricopolis is on there. Yeah, several. And just to give a little bit of an idea of what we do, because it's kind of like, okay, well, you're a network. What do you do work on the ground? It's like, well, no, not really. We're really just like lifting up the work of our partners. So what is that? What does that look like? This is our strategic plan that was put in place. It was basically a year-long process with our steering committee as well as many of our partners over 2022 for a 3-year strategic plan with the priorities that came out of that were build the coalition's capacity for leadership and expansion, enhance partner collaboration to drive innovation, implementation, impact, and cultivate awareness through education, outreach, and advocacy. So on that first one, it's really how are we building the capacity, yes, of our coalition and our backbone, but the leaders that are doing this work in the state, and bringing more folks into the fold. So really that kind of internal building that powerhouse of soil health in the state. And then enhancing partner collaboration. How are we connecting the dots from research to implementation to communications and identifying where there's needs and opportunities, filling those gaps, looping partners in, identifying new partners, and really enhancing that knowledge exchange across the state. And then cultivate awareness, which is a little bit what we'll be focusing on today with the For the Soil initiative. How are we then pushing that information out beyond this network to, say, the movement, to expand that movement to your general public, your farmers, your homeowners, all of these different audiences, consumers? That's something we've been thinking about a little more recently, so that everyone recognizes why soil health matters within their values, within their worlds, and what they can do about it. So just, yeah, a little bit of what that looks like on the ground. We have a diverse steering committee that has quarterly meetings, and Kendall Tyree's on that. Broad network of partners and allies, continually growing, always inviting any new partner into that mix. So if you're interested, just send me your logo, and it's really just saying you support our mission and vision and are working to move soil health forward in your work. Quarterly open meetings, and actually, I'll drop a link later in the chat. We have one coming up next Monday on June 16th, that's focused on innovation in soil health and water quality and tracking metrics. But those are open to everyone. It's not just a partners piece. It's how can getting everyone there to learn from other partners, to share updates. We'll bring speakers in. We'll have farmer panels, a diversity of efforts, and those are always virtual, just to really allow the maximum number of people across the state to be there. And then doing a bunch of collaborative soil health efforts. So we've done a lot of professional development training. Several of you may have been part of some of those efforts. We did dig and demo field days a few years back. We just did a social science training on conservation outreach to producers. And these are a lot of these are really targeted towards practitioners. So partnering a lot with Extension, NRCS, soil and water districts, and the association on those. Farmer to farmer mentoring. We push a network of farmer mentors to really help, where are there gaps and how can farmers help build that trust? We know that they are such a trusted source for other farmers to learn from. So, using some of the most innovative farmers in the state and paying them basically to mentor other farmers. For the Soul Initiative, we'll go into work some with Sustainable Chesapeake, that's leading the Innovative Farmer Roundtable, which is gathering a really innovative group of row crop producers, basically to exchange information and do that peer-to-peer exchange about the innovations they're trying on their farm, different equipment, different nitrogen rate trials, lots of different things, and just allowing that exchange to happen. And then just ongoing education and outreach. That's, I know, a big bucket, but we're kind of always being nimble and stepping in where needed, finding opportunities, filling holes, to move the work forward. All right, so the Forest Soil Awareness Initiative. This is kind of, and I like to talk about the coalition a little before going into this, just kind of to say, it can get a little confusing what the For the Soil Initiative is. It's like, well, you're the director of the For the Soil Initiative or the coalition. No, the coalition for the Soil Initiative is kind of just a piece of our work. It's kind of our outreach and education arm, I say. And it's also, though, bigger than the coalition. It's this aim to really push out to broad audiences and identify how everyone can find their overlap in soil health. How can we raise that awareness, not just for farmers, not just for homeowners, for consumers, for anyone, for youth, really trying to identify all of those audiences. So here's this goal. How do we call people to care for soil health through the four core principles, which are keep the soil covered, minimize soil disturbance, maximize living roots, and energize with diversity, which is the core of the coalition. That is the common ground that all coalition partners come together around. And then this is our effort to push that outwards and bring folks in. So why for the soil? Yes, it's kind of a play on words. It's the four core principles. We are for the soil. And this idea that in a time of division, a time where there's a lot of things we can disagree on, that being for the soil is something that we can all come together around. No matter what your background is, what your goals and values are, that there is an intersection there with soil health. And we really focus on human values, human stories, human connections, and see this effort as a lens for seen and unseen connections. And we also really want to use it as a way to lift up the work that all of our partners are doing. And so that's kind of what we're here. I'm hopeful to talk to you all about today is how can we, use the materials we have, the graphics we have, the approach to really lift up the work that all of you are doing. So we know it's an educational thrust that's touching all of our partners and program areas from agricultural to urban, and to youth education and all across the board. So just a few pictures you can from our site here with the four core principles focus a lot on really wanting to keep it fun and light. Whether we kind of started doing that for youth, and then we realized that adults were like really having fun with that approach to it too, and keeping it simple. And so we're really, for the soil is kind of a doorway to connect folks with more advanced resources if that is what they're interested in. So we will push folks to the districts, to extension offices, to NRCS, but we aren't the ones doing that technical guidance ourselves. So, really wanting to be a place to pull people in and then push them to the great resources we have across the state. I think that QR code should just go to the website too, but e4thesoil.org is simple enough to put in your site. We also do a podcast that comes out every 2 weeks. And that's been a really fun place to get a lot of voices out. We have had farmers, we have had chefs on, we have had practitioners, lots of folks we've had from I know from the districts. The first one that comes to mind is Bob Waring was a guest on 2 episodes and talked actually about his operation and some of the work that he's trialing specifically around economic benefits of implementing soil health. So a lot of diversity there, and just a fun way, just as we're thinking about places that we can lift up your work in the districts, just something to keep in the back of your mind as an opportunity because we're always looking for topics, guests, things that we can lift up through this. And just as kind of a metric, so far we've had, on a blank on the number of episodes, but we've done, I think, 4 years of episodes, 3 years, and 17,000 downloads. So really getting it out there, and getting a lot of, and it's a diversity of types of listeners too. Just a few examples too of thinking of partnership and overlap of kind of um, where we've connected with some of our partners around this initiative. Here on the left, this is an article that was in Virginia State University's Small Farm Outreach Program newsletter that goes to 8,000 farmers across the state. And over the years, we've had several articles in there about soil health, and worked with them on producing those. We've done some specialty badges. So, we are for the soil for the future is kind of our core one. But Master Gardeners came to us and said, hey, we really are wanting to, we're doing a program specific around Chesapeake Bay, which a lot of our partners, that is really their focus. And so we said, yeah, we'll do a for the soil for the bay graphic. So that's what that is. Worked with Forage and Grassland Council to get on their annual calendar soil health tips in there, and they helped design the tips to make sure they were specific to grazers and grazing systems. And then we just kind of provided the graphics and helped design that. Master Gardeners created this fun graphic on how the four core principles apply to the garden. And so looking to do more of that. They have a great graphic designer on their team. So it was fun to work with her. And then we've made some yard signs, and this was actually one that just an enthusiastic district director printed this sign to put in her garden. And these, I love the youth piece has kind of just been very recent that's come along. And it's really been a natural extension, but something we want to do more of and are looking for opportunities to do more of. But we designed a coloring book a couple years ago, and it has been like we cannot keep that in stock. So I'm having to just send the PDF to folks and say, print this as much as you want because we can't keep it in stock. But this is at the state fair. The association helped us hand some materials out. And so those coloring books with the four principles and activities around it are really popular. Our For the Soil buttons, I think this is a 4-H student. They collect buttons. And so those have been really popular. This is an ag education class that got our t-shirts and wears them to every one of their ag field days. And then we've done a bunch of stickers with different kind of graphics and logos on them that have been popular. So just a few things. And then these are kind of the fun characters that came out of the coloring book, but we're also looking to do more with. I printed some temporary tattoos that were really popular for a fair last year, and we've had some stickers. So, the sky's kind of the limit, and something that we've really been thinking of with the coalition recently is kind of how do we step more into the urban and suburban space. And for the soil, I think is one avenue to really connect with urban and suburban partners. And VCAP is really top of my mind. You all are the ones providing that outreach and really connecting with homeowners on that level. And it seems like there's a lot of natural connection. And so just wanted to hear from everyone on where you may see opportunities for connection between soil health and the VCAP program or work in the districts in general, and then how we can best support the work of the districts around VCAP. But also just have some conversation around what's working with your marketing and your outreach and education right now. Always looking to learn from each other and hear what's working, and then where you may need support and where partners could come in, whether it's myself and our group or there's someone else in the coalition we can loop in. Just hoping to have some of that conversation since you all are on the ground doing the work and seeing where the need is. But also would take any questions that have come up through all this, and I'll take a look. There may be some things in the chat that have come up. Let me stop my share, although I know it has the questions up here, but I'd rather be able to see all the names and faces here. Let me just. Oh, great. Thanks, Rachel, for putting that link in the chat. Um, but yeah, any ideas? Is anything popping to mind for anyone around, I guess, where in VCAP are you seeing potential intersections with promoting soil health and outreach, or where it could be beneficial to your work to promote VCAP? I'll try not to have to pick on people.
Um, Off the top of my head, I think I talk about soil health during site visits when I'm talking about conservation landscaping and rain gardening and planting projects, and how the projects will improve the soil, basically. I think that's basically how I integrate soil health into how we run our program.
That's awesome. And even just, I guess, a follow-up question, are you seeing interest, like when you say soil health, or are you seeing homeowners getting excited about that? Is there an awareness, understanding, or do you feel like there's gaps?
Um, I would say who are already aware of the importance of native landscapes are also already aware about soil health and the importance of it. I think I see people, how I'm educating people is talking about how important roots are for preserving soil. That's, I
Mm,
think, what really helps people connect why it's important, why plants affect erosion and soil health.
mm. That's good to think about with the roots piece. I feel like there's a lot of potential there to build on. I mean, one of the principles is maximize living roots. So,
Yeah, especially like when we talk about soil erosion, I think that's the biggest component that connects is talking about how do we mitigate soil erosion and how we can utilize core logs um, to back up the soil, infill the soil, and then eventually the roots will hold on to the soil itself so that the netting material and other erosion mitigation um, practices can hold on to the soil. Basically, we'd be like, I always say, like, the roots are like the hands grabbing onto the soil and keeping it there. I would say the site visits are probably the most educational aspect when it comes to soil health.
and are those in Rachel, like all of you would know this answer, but so the site visits are required? Is there one site visit required for each, or how's that work?
Yeah, so there's a minimum of one, but I know some districts might utilize that time to meet multiple times. Perhaps if they're looking at different types of practices. So, um, yeah, at least one is required, but there could be more. And there's also one at the end as well, a minimum of one at the end as well to verify that the practice was installed. So that could kind of loop back around to that education piece of like, this is what it's doing. And then we can reiterate further once it's installed, like, hey, this is what you've done. And this is what you can expect to see over time as your BMP matures and that soil is continued or continues to be stabilized.
I've got an idea, Rachel. So, um, one of the things that I give landowners is a link to the Virginia Tech soil test documentation. But what we found is it maybe a one pager might be more helpful. I haven't looked at what for the soil provides, what kind of materials you have, but something like a one pager, um, that might be helpful, less technical.
Well, I wonder, that's a great idea, Emily, and it has me thinking, Thomas Bowles, who's an extension agent out of, oh, I'm blanking on what county. He's near Fredericksburg. But he put together an extension publication that's basically a how do you interpret your soil test results, and it's kind of simplifying it, and it's specific for homeowners. Um, Now we tried with extension to get our for the soil to make it more fun looking, so it wasn't like didn't look like a scientific publication, and that was hard to get it through an extension publication. But we could probably work with Thomas to design something that had that material in a one-pager format. And could, work to maybe co-brand it with the districts and, whatever that could look like. So I think that's a great idea. And is that Emily, what you were thinking, something about interpreting soil test results or actually the importance of taking a soil test or
Um, I don't know. It's just, it's kind of still an idea I have that I'm working
yeah.
with, but that's the resource that I direct the homeowners to, and um, I don't know that it's all that helpful, you
Yeah.
know. So right, it's not a fully developed thought. Sorry.
No, it's a great thought, and I think something definitely to keep, for us to keep thinking on, and I'd love to keep brainstorming. Oh, yes, Rachel, you're amazing. You already found it.
One other thought I had is that so we have when there's a BMP that requires an infiltration test, like permeable pavement or rain gardens, we have the homeowners. It usually is the case that they do the infiltration test themselves, which requires them digging a hole in the ground a couple feet and filling up with water. And I think that's a really good educational component where they're learning what their soil looks like and all the different layers. And sometimes they have to have a person, one of our soil scientists, come out and do a water table test or a perk test. And they learn about that as well and about how different soils have different absorption rates and how different areas can be. So that's the thing. Hmm.
That's really helpful to know because I mean, infiltration tests are something we use as actually a demonstration, like for farmers. And so I
Hmm.
think, yeah, is there some way to pull on that? That's good to know.
Hmm.
Is there any with VCAP, what's I guess the outreach for it? And do you feel like there's any need for other materials tied to soil health? Would that be beneficial, at educational events or outreach events? Yes, Jean, I see Jean, I see your hand.
Hey, um, I think we need to highly encourage people to go as natural as possible, stay away from chemicals whenever possible that are just damaging our soil. I've been studying a lot here how to not only feed all the animals I have here at the farm without buying feed, but I've been learning how to nourish the soil without buying fertilizer. And one thing I've been studying lately is comfrey. Do you know you can chop up a comfrey plant? Not only do the roots, it's a really hard plant to get rid of, it just spreads and the roots hold the soil, as well as when you do chop it down, it nourishes the soil with its high nutrients. You know, you can chop up a comfrey plant and throw it out there, and every little bit of the root, every little bit of the leaf will root. And there you've got a whole field of comfrey that not only is super high in protein and calcium, which your chickens and stuff have got to get at least 16% protein before they'll give eggs. So comfrey is like one of those things that I think we really need to promote. I'm really into doing things the old way. So I'm really trying to educate people how to do things the way they used to do it, you know, in a healthy way. You know, so that's just me. I know, you know, I'm just so against all the chemicals being used, you know, because they not only kill the plants, they kill the bugs, they kill the worms. We have some worm farms here, and the worms, when you're out in a healthy field, you see bugs, you see worms, you know. Just my 2 cents. Thanks.
No, I appreciate that, Jean. And that we talk about that life in the soil piece and that minimizing disturbance. It's not, yes, there's the minimizing the physical disturbance with tillage, but also where possible, the minimizing chemical disturbance is important, whether it's agricultural or homeowner. Is there any nutrient management component of VCAP? I guess it's not a lawn program, so that's probably where it doesn't really fit in.
Yeah, not exactly. I mean, the BMPs are targeted towards water quality. So the idea of improving infiltration and thereby reducing nitrogen, phosphorus, and total suspended solids that are entering the bay or the southern rivers, depending on where you're located. But not so much a nutrient goal.
Okay, as far as like lawn
Outside of it.
fertilization or
Right. We don't want to include nitrates or any fertilizers or anything like that. We encourage compost at the most.
okay.
Natives don't really respond well to fertilizer and things like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Alex. We try to promote picking the plants for your site versus manipulating
Okay.
your site to your plants.
Well, not picking the plants for your site and the natives piece, I think there is such a connection to soil health that isn't always as lifted up as, if you're facilitating the natural way the land should be used, it's going to also support life in the soil. You're going to maximize those living roots that cover. So I think that's also, I'm just brainstorming myself places where for the soil we could do a better job at lifting up that piece of, that native plants has many benefits. One of those is for the soil. So yeah, I am thinking of where there's overlap that we can push and then promote the VCAP program. Yeah, Jean.
And I would think again, look to the past. You know, we all keep looking forward, which is fine, but used to be the farmer, you know, plowed with a mule and an old plow, and as the mule walked, he fertilized the field, and as he tilled up the little bit of furrow he was tilling up, he wasn't tilling deep, but as he did that, he exposed Japanese beetles and things, and then the birds were behind him eating all the beetles, so nobody had to spray for bugs. So the birds were eating all the bugs that the plow kind of brought to the surface. So it was just, you know, I don't know. I would love to us to look at kind of how they used to do it, you know, sort of.
Yeah, well, and something even, if there's ever Jean, a program that you or other districts are wanting to do looking at some of those practices that we could support and even from a branding or outreach perspective around, we've looked into opportunities to promote indigenous practices, and we know that there's a lot of regenerative soil health components of those.
I'd be
Just
very willing to work with y'all on that. I mean, I've made it kind of a mission to study how we can live in today's world. And I'm into AI and everything. I'm using that for the farm and stuff. Speeds me up, right? But we need to look at, yeah, all these chemicals. It's just not working. It's not working. So.
What all are you seeing working with your outreach and education work, specifically with homeowners? Eden, you mentioned a few of the things that are working around soil health, but also just broadly, is social media working? Is it going to actual outreach events or local fairs? What's the...
You're
Interestingly,
asking me?
our, did you say Jean or Eden?
Oh, well, but was both of you. So yeah,
Okay.
Eden, if you want to go and then we'll...
Yeah, you go, Eden.
So our soil scientist Dan is an amazing public speaker. I don't know if you know Dan. Probably not.
I think I've met him before, and I think we've thought for a while of doing a speakers bureau because everyone always comes to me about who are good soil health speakers, and so now I'm gonna loop Dan into my
He's a
Rolodex.
fantastic speaker. He does so many speaking events, and he presents at so many HOAs and communities and churches, and we get so many site visit requests from Dan's events.
That's awesome. It's finding, yeah, those good speakers and who, that can inspire and make those connections.
I've found social media works pretty good, using like closed groups that are talking. And I haven't, and I forgive me, I've not really looked to see if SWCD has some closed groups where people are joining and discussing this. I think that's good. I think we're all concerned about the same things. Yeah, and it's going to be, us that are really living it, that have time to really get into it, that are going to be the leaders in this to take us back to a more healthy soil. And soil is the basis of everything. I mean, if our soil is bad, whether it's chemicals or washing away or anything. I live in Matthews, so Matthews is very wet, I mean, you can't bury a cat around here without it filling with water. And so, yeah, you've got to really, and any chemicals we use go right into our water, our wells, it will go right into the food we're trying to grow. It's a real problem. And I think, but if we all work towards it, I'm sure we can have, an impact. I'm sure we can.
And I'm seeing in the chat from Alex the benefits of the outreach events, water quality cleanups. I don't know, Alex, if you'd be willing to talk some about those and or those events that the district your district is running.
Yeah, we're pretty unique in terms of water quality. I don't know if you know Veronica Tangiri, but we have a pretty extensive water quality team that goes out and actually does volunteer water quality cleanups along streams and things like that. So while we do um, the volunteer events, we also kind of, s- let them know about VCAP and how the homeowners themselves can do that on their own properties and things like that. And we've had quite a bit of people reach out from that.
Hmm,
So yeah, a lot of volunteer events.
that's really neat. Well, and that'd be something too, as I know one of the challenges is capacity. It's like Alex, you mentioned you guys have a substantial water quality team, but if there's places where you have an idea for an event, but need support and capacity to partner on that, that could be somewhere the coalition could step in. We just hired a new staff person who's going to be outreach education specialist, so there could be a role there for them to partner. So just putting bugs in the back of your minds as you think about opportunities. Anyone else? Anything on any of these topics? Even landscapers. Well, it's funny. The coalition there's been a little outside of some of the for the soil work, but trying to loop it all in. We've been we've connected some with Virginia Turfgrass Council and specifically their Environmental Institute, and have done a couple trainings for landscapers, and are still really figuring out like what does that outreach look like? What is the goal? Because we know we're never going to get rid of turf, and that's not our goal, but how can we help improve education around soil health and water quality, and work with landscapers on that. So I would love to, as you all move down that route, see what you're learning. And
I worked with a landscaping company for a while, and then I ran my own landscaping company for a bit before I opened my farm. And yes, landscapers, all they're doing is spraying. I know when I worked with the landscaping company, I refused to spray Roundup and everything. I used vinegar and salt and Dawn, and it worked just fine on all these fancy estates driveways, stone, rock driveways. Um, Everybody I used to work for now has cancer, except for me, because they were breathing that every day and it was getting on their skin. It's just not healthy. And so, yeah, we have got to reach people about that. I used to have 20 beehives around Gloucester, Matthews, and Middlesex. And I had one gentleman one time, I used to go every week and check on them and everything. And I had them in places away from sprayed fields so that they would not get contaminated. And one gentleman thought he was helping me because I wasn't, because I came every week and weed eated around the hives and checked on them, make sure they were okay. He sprayed Roundup around it and killed the hive. He was just trying to help me put the weeds down. But, people are thinking, I've had landscapers tell me, oh, you can drink Roundup, it won't hurt you. I'm like, OMG, I mean, we have got to educate people, and in any way we can, and we've got to be an example of the example. We got to be a product of the product, So we've got to stand behind what we're saying and be healthy and show others how to be healthy. I think that's where we're at, so.
and seeing also in the chat HOA meetings, that's a huge group and where there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunity too. And so as again, with those, if there's areas where you're thinking, oh, well, we would love, at our HOA meetings to have, a little something on soil health we could give out or something. Not can't make any promises, but would love to, we have some graphic designers we work with, as you all are thinking about ideas or needs. Oh, awesome. And thanks, Emily, for putting that in the chat. Oh, yes. Is this the one? Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, so I looked at the one that Rachel provided, and that's like interpreting the soil test results. But
Yeah.
this is like if you're even just trying to convince somebody that they need to do a soil test,
Okay. So,
right?
yeah,
And
this is
it's quite
long.
lengthy. It's like 4 or 5
Yeah.
pages. So
I'm
yeah,
gonna, no, this is yeah, I would love to see if we could do a shorter version of this and, make it a little more user friendly.
yeah, and I
Probably
mean it
actually
says
refreshing, 'cause this I think is probably a little old. Just looking through it. Yeah, this is something I think that even our new outreach and education specialists would be perfect to work on. So Emily
awesome.
may reach out to you and if we're working on something, just see if it'd be something that you think folks would find helpful.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Um, as far as like HOAs and other outreach events, um, I recently went to a Rotary Club, and I'm not a member, but they had published their meeting schedule, and it was in a public space and everything. And I just went a few minutes early, and I just talked to them briefly. I said, interested in what your club does, and then they invited me to stay for the meeting. And they had a space on their agenda for speaker. And so, I gave him a brochure, and he said, the president said he would send it out to membership. And if that seemed like something their group was interested in, they would maybe ask me back to be a speaker for their group. But again, like those kind of organizations might be helpful in promoting the program, right? They might not be landowners, the organization might not have land themselves, but helping to spread the word. So that was my 2 cents about outreach.
It's a great suggestion. And, thinking of some of those outside of the box, I guess, entities like Rotary Club that have a lot of influence too, and, and are reaching different sectors. So it's a great idea. Anything else? Rachel and Melissa, I may turn it back to you. Do you guys have anything to add or anything that this is, getting you to think of?
My brain is full of thought. Can I articulate it fully? Perhaps
In my
not.
life.
No, but I've really enjoyed this. I think it's helpful to know kind of, Virginia is diverse, like you said at the beginning. It's helpful to kind of get a better understanding of how districts are reaching out and actually getting interest from landowners on more of the suburban, urban, non-agricultural side. So it's a little bit of grassroots. It's a little bit of showing up to events and then letting that kind of foster a path forward, speaking events like Dan Schwartz does. So there are a lot of opportunities to keep soils in the back of our mind and make sure that we're communicating that to even if people don't participate in VCAP, that's still an important message. So yeah, this has been very, I know that wasn't, I didn't add a bunch of information there, but yeah, good food for thought for sure.
Awesome.
Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you both. And I dropped my email in the chat. Would love to, feel free and any of you reach out or keep chatting. And actually, let me, before I have to run here, put also for the upcoming coalition meeting, both the registration and agenda, it's always up virtual, is here, and would love to have any of you join. Well, I made the mistake of double booking myself for the last 15 minutes of this somehow. But appreciate you all letting me come and chat some and would love to continue this and support, make sure that the coalition and the For the Soil Initiative are supporting the districts and the VCAP program as much as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out with ideas, things you need, thoughts. All welcome.
Amazing. Well, thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being here, Mary. Y'all are welcome to stay on if you have any burning questions that you'd like to chat about. Alyssa and I will stay till 3 o'clock, but please do not feel obligated to stay unless you have a question or want to chat about anything specific. And with that, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in the discussion. Really appreciate y'all.
Yes, thank you.